Hey, welcome everyone to our live. Excited to have you all here on with us today. And you may be noticing that there's just two of us here, and it's just Gary and I. We're missing Colleen, who brings tremendous insights into what we talk about every week as the president of Lawyer.com. But she's we're not just missing Colleen, she's missing her voice. And so we talked to her, and she's not fluent in American Sign Language. So she can't speak right now, Gary. And so we are gonna spend some time with you today without Colleen. We made some references to Ariel and Little Mermaid and how she just can't speak. But
You know what's interesting, Chad, is the way she lost her voice was cheering for her horse in the Derby, and so maybe that is where the expression "horse throat" comes from.
oh,
I don't
stop
know.
it, stop it, stop it. Okay, that was terrible. Okay, now it's and given that Colleen's having to overcome her challenge today with the voice, we're going to talk about overcoming two today, you and I, just in the few minutes that we have, and how you can overcome objections to really grow and scale your law firm. And Gary, when we do our trainings, we have 10 key steps to overcoming objections. And when we do our coaching and our trainings, we break these down specifically. But obviously, we don't have time to jump into all 10 of those here as we are live with everybody. But let's talk about three. Let's pick out three specific ways that you right now in your firm can apply so that you can start growing revenue, so that you can start achieving your hopes, goals, and dreams. And so much of it comes down to overcoming objections. Because I frankly, one of the things, and Gary, you and I have been in this space, in the legal space, for many, many years. And one of the things we hear too often from law firms is they'll say, Chad, if I just had better leads, I'd be more successful, right? How many times have we heard that, and I know you do a whole training on the Boston Project where you talk about what happened when one firm got the same leads as another firm, right? And how one really capitalized on it and the other one said it was terrible. But we just hear too often, oh, these leads are terrible, and then Gary, we'll get on and listen to the calls that are actually happening, and someone sends an objection, and the person on the other line either can overcome the objection or they create five more objections while talking through the one objection. And so as you think about your law firm, and as you think about, okay, I want to grow, I want more revenue, I want to scale, I just need better leads, which is too often the case, when in reality, we need to pause and stop and look at, okay, am I overcoming the objections the right way? And too often we're just so close to the situation that we can't really see where we might be making some mistakes there. So Gary, let's talk about 3 of the 10 that we normally cover in our training. I'll go ahead and have you pick. They're all 10 of them are important, but let's just talk about 3 of them today. Give us one, Gary.
All right. Well, let's start with what I think is probably maybe the foundation, meaning like while there's a number of keys to overcoming objections, I think it all starts with listening fully and listening actively. Because, well, I think a lot of times before you respond, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you fully understand the objection. So actively listening and encouraging the prospect to elaborate on their concerns. And I think this not only shows empathy, but also provides valuable insight to really the root cause of what could potentially be their reason for hesitation. So I'm going to say the first thing, Chad, would be listen fully and listen actively.
I love that you brought that up, Gary, because listening actively and fully is one of those things when we're listening to the calls, or our team's listening to the calls, that people really struggle with. What happens is the intake specialist is listening to so many people, the sales team's listening to so many different prospects that they think, oh, I've heard this objection before. I know what they're going to say here. And so they just start trying to jump in before they even really listen actively. Or in their mind, for example, someone will start talking about pricing as an objection, which is a common one. And the salesperson or the intake specialist goes, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, they don't understand this. And they're not truly listening actively to understand where the person's coming from. Now, where the PNC, the potential new client, is coming from. But the reality, Gary, is when you listen actively, you said it really creates empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and people feel that, oh my goodness, they really care about my situation. They really care about my situation. And so I love that you bring that up. And what I'm going to give number two, so listen actively,
Mm-hmm.
is number one, but number two, it kind of connects with that. And I'm going to say, asking for clarification. So number one, listen actively, but number two, asking questions and really seeking clarification, because we live in a world today where people are not good at listening. They just aren't. And we'll be in the middle of a conversation and someone will pull out a phone and start texting in the middle of our conversation. So, and if you haven't had that experience, then one, you don't talk enough to teenagers, or two, you just, it's happening and you're not noticing it. People will literally, you're talking to someone and they'll start texting in the middle of the conversation. So people aren't great at listening and actively listening and asking questions for clarification. And when you ask questions, people will then begin to believe that you understand where they're coming from. And understand this, wherever you are, if you can stop and write this down, because this is a fact. If you can describe their problem better than they can express it, you win.
Yep.
If you can describe their problem better than they can express it, then you win. So the reality is, as you are asking those clarifying questions, they will begin to think, oh my goodness, they understand where I'm coming from. So listening actively and asking those clarifications. Now, before you give us number three, Gary, I do want to emphasize most law firms that Gary and I are talking with, and Colleen, if she was here, she would agree. And since she's not here, I can just put words in Colleen's mouth, and so Colleen would agree that just too often law firms believe, oh, I am doing this, or my firm is doing this, right? And we often hear, Colleen say that there are three things that are happening in a law firm: what the attorney says is happening, what the staff says is happening, and number three,
what's
actually happening. And so we really want to emphasize, make sure that everybody really is doing this. And as the attorney and the owner of the law firm, you need to pause and just make sure, okay, is the intake and sales team actively listening, right? Are they asking clarifying questions? Because too often we assume that they are. And then give us number three. Give us the third. You have 8 more to choose from there, Gary, but just pick one of those.
Well, it's really hard. And I couldn't make up my mind at first. So I'm going to stop for a minute and just say that the other thing that I like about what you said was that also helps to identify whether or not it was an objection or a smokescreen, getting that clarification, uncovering that. So it does a whole host of other things. All right. So I
Okay,
bought
wait,
myself
real quick, before you move on, we need to understand that. And I know you do an in-depth training on smokescreen versus objections, and we don't have time to completely unpack that. But for everyone listening, a smokescreen could just be something that somebody's just putting up there because they're not comfortable yet. An objection is a real concern. It's real. A smokescreen is not. An objection is real. And too often, when somebody is not actively listening or not asking for clarification or clarifying questions, they're not able to determine the difference between the smokescreen and the objection. And we'll get into that, and we get into detail with that in our trainings. But also, many of you have started to hear that or have heard that we're having a big event in October, October 22nd, 23rd, and through the 25th down in Las Vegas at the Fontainebleau Resort. It's a phenomenal, but I don't want to get down that rabbit hole too much, but that's a look for information on that as well. But give us number 3, Gary.
So I'm gonna say that creating a sense of partnership in the dialogue is probably more valuable than most people even realize. And I wonder if anybody ever really thought of it this way. But the reason why I chose that is, as you know, one of the things that I think is a blessing to us all if we're able to use it. And those are taking advantages of the influence triggers, those things that influence people, sometimes without even them knowing, but it helps lead them down a path that's really in their best interest. So I think when you create a sense of partnership, what you're doing is you're emphasizing collaboration. And that happens to be one of the triggers in forming a relationship. And it helps form that connection of liking. So when you're working with somebody at the other end of the phone, Zoom, or whether they're in person, if you're seen as being on their side and working with them to help resolve the problem, that kind of lets the prospect know that you're in this together. Their goal is your goal. And I think that goes a long way to eliminate fears of being misunderstood or not having your interests aligned and properly prioritized. But that was so hard to do, to narrow it down to 3, because obviously they all play an important role, and it's always, it's never one thing, I should say. It's all of these things working together, and it's that old adage that obviously you're only as strong as your weakest link. And to that extent, you couldn't be having a perfectly good what you think to be an onboarding, or excuse me, an intake or closing experience, but you miss one of these 10 things that you alluded to that we talk about in great detail and train on. It can have a devastating impact. But I think we did a pretty good job of identifying the foundational elements and the reason why. But it is hard to not discuss them all.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are 3 questions then, because we discussed 3, that anyone listening to this live can take back and really apply and see a bump in their revenue. And that is the intake team actively listening? Number 1. Number 2, are they asking clarifying questions? 1, actively listening. Are they 2, asking clarifying questions? And number 3, are they partnering with the PNC, with the potential new client, to resolve these concerns so that they feel like it is a partnership? They are not looking for a transaction. They're looking for a partner. People are craving connection. People are craving connection. Now more than ever, they're craving connection. And people are thinking, wait a second, they want to connect with the attorney. They just want to have resolution. No, people are absolutely craving connection. And so do they feel that there is a partnership happening there? Overcoming these objections, I promise you, If you are intentional there, you will see a significant bump in your revenue. Gary, thank you for the insights. Let's all hope that Colleen has no more. I know we have a triple crown. The Preakness is coming up. I think that's the next one, but she won't be yelling at that one as well. But I think it was even actually allergies involved as well. So we all wish Colleen well, and hopefully she'll be back with us next week. See everyone, have a tremendous week.